Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. I was on mute while I was speaking. That was my fault completely. Regardless, welcome. I'm Kylie Woods, founder and executive director of Chic Geek. Thank you so much for joining us today as we are excited to host the latest event in our BTS series featuring Suncor. BTS stands for Behind the Scenes, and we're taking you backstage with emerging technology driven companies because this is a vibrant ecosystem with lots of amazing opportunities, and we want to showcase the many ways you can grow your career in technology. This series dives into the people, culture, and leadership of technology companies, as well as the opportunities to join the team. Chic Geek exists because there's not enough women in technology, and the women we do have are leaving. We're here to change that. We believe through mentorship, peer elevation, and community support, we can shift the narrative. We're determined to help women find their future and forge new paths in technology because this will have a bold and beneficial impact on the future and the tech that defines it. Chic Geek stands for diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging. We support reconciliation and believe we all have a role to play in building harmonious relationships between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people. A land acknowledgement is a traditional custom of the Indigenous people when welcoming outsiders onto their land and into their homes. And with virtual events, I think we experience what it's like to be in everybody's homes a lot more closely these days. So, to build respectful relationships, acknowledging the land is an important part of reconciliation. It honors the authentic history of North America, its original people, and tells the creation story of our country that has historically been missing. In gratitude, I acknowledge that we're gathering here today on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, and the Métis Nation Region 3. We acknowledge all nations, Indigenous and non, who live, work, and play on this land, and who honor and celebrate this territory. Thank you for your enthusiasm and commitment to join us for this digital event hosted on the beautiful lands of Treaty 7 territory. Today, we're going behind the scenes with Suncor, specifically the boundary-pushing advanced analytics team. We'll explore the nuances between different roles in data, identify career growth opportunities, and discuss what it takes to build a successful career in this space. I'll do a brief intro to Chic Geek, our speakers, and then move into the panel discussion. And we'll save some time at the end for audience questions, so feel free to put them in the chat throughout the discussion. At the end, we'll also be sending a survey to get your feedback on the experience with us today. At its core, Chic Geek was an initiative built for the community, by the community, and your input continues to shape us. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to set the ground rules for our event today. I ask our panelists to share candidly and vulnerably so we can have a meaningful discussion. I ask that our audience members be present and participate. It's easy to answer a few emails during those digital events, but when you're part of Chic Geek, you own a piece of it, and we ask that you show up. And finally, we hope you'll adopt our values while you're with us. What are our values? At Chic Geek, we are brave explorers. We step outside our comfort zone, take bold risks, and we refuse to let fears stand in our way. We don't shy away from tough conversations. We are relentlessly curious. We are inquisitive question askers, and we're always learning something new, whether it's professionally or personally. We're constantly educating ourselves and evolving from our discoveries. We believe in peer elevation, that platforms are meant to be shared. We're always here with a helping hand, and we're not afraid to ask for one either. And lastly, we strive for candid and connected relationships. We create meaningful, intentional relationships with other wonderful humans. We know that to do this requires a deep connection to self, and that fostering this connection creates space for self-compassion, discovery, and understanding. I'm seeing some quick comments here that some folks are having difficulty with sound. If you are, thank you, Teresa, for the suggestion. Try refreshing the page. Well, I guess if you're not hearing things and you're still not getting this, Lauren will put that suggestion back into the chat and make sure that we can see that as well. Okay, back into our event today. We are having this discussion with Suncor. We've got two wonderful speakers that are joining us on stage. Suncor's advanced analytics team has been operational since October 2019, so it's a relatively new team, but it's fast growing and they're constantly on the lookout for data scientists, data architects, data engineers, data developers, and visualization specialists. The team is founded on the belief that data needs to be embedded in the entire organization, not siloed. This unique team supports different business units across the company, and projects range from dashboard creation to predictive analytics to improve personal and process safety, asset reliability, operations optimization, and environmental performance. Impact is a key piece of this team. Beyond analyzing the data and making critical recommendations, there's always a team member involved in implementation and sustainment, so there's a clear line of sight to the finish. One of the coolest things about the Advanced Analytics team at Suncor is their Advanced Analytics Academy, an internal training program that acts as a training program for new hires, provides constant development for their team, and is also available to other individuals across the company to learn data principles and practices. Today, we're talking with two women who love data. They've built their careers in this space, but have undergone pivots and points in their careers where they too have felt like they're not qualified or don't know what they're doing. And I think that's something that is a shared experience among many of us, regardless of our roles. So with that, I'd like to welcome Laura Chutney on stage. Laura is a data scientist on the advanced analytics team at Suncor. She built her career as a hands-on process engineer and has worked for petrochemical and engineering majors like Shell, SNC-Lavalin, Fluor Canada. And she was a partner in an engineering consulting firm for 10 years before she pivoted her career into data. And when she received her Master's of Information and Data Science from Berkeley, she was able to transform her love for detail into the ability to see patterns and ask hard questions. As a data scientist with Suncor, Laura helps business units define problems and identify the technical needs to deliver value and affect transformation within the company. When she's not wrestling data, you can find her knitting, riding her bike, and enjoying a good cup of coffee while listening to the latest sci-fi audiobook. Welcome, Laura.
Thanks, Kylie. It's exciting to be here, and the values of SheGeek are very much what I've pretty much lived with my whole career as both an engineer and a data scientist. I always say you can take the girl out of engineering, but you can't take the engineering out of the girl. And so, yeah, very glad to be here.
I love that, Laura. You can't take the engineering out of the girl. All right, and next up, I want to welcome Winnie. So Winnie is an advanced analytics solution architect and has vast experience in enterprise software implementation and reporting. She uses design thinking and a human-centric approach to develop strategies, model architectures, and identify critical business challenges. Winnie's excited to be part of Suncor's digital transformation journey, using data and analytics to tackle big business problems. Her strength and passion lies in data modeling and analytics. And Winnie has spent her career in data, but a few years ago made a big move and left a company that she'd spent 17 years with. And that feeling of starting everything from scratch and potentially downgrading your career is a fear she's familiar with. So for anyone going through a career pivot or rediscovery, both Winnie and Laura today, even though they have vast experience in the space, have shared that feeling, and you're not alone. So I'm excited to welcome Winnie. Hello.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here as well. This is the first time I know about SheGeek, and I personally is really excited about having more women in this field. So I'm happy to share my experience, and hopefully that will encourage more people to go into this area.
Absolutely. Thank you, Winnie. So, okay, Laura, you're a data scientist, and Winnie, you are a solution architect. Can you help us understand, like, what are the nuances and the differences between those two roles? And Laura, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, sure. They're different and similar. I'm sure once you hear both of us, it'll start to make a bit of sense. It's all about making better decisions with data, right? Like that's kind of our data-driven philosophy that we're aiming at. But from a data scientist perspective, we're really the science in the data. So think statistics, think storytelling around the data, but also we use tools like machine learning. Of course, you have to know some programming to do that. A good example, if people aren't really familiar with what that means from a data science perspective, think of Netflix. Probably everybody, or most people at least, have used Netflix. And, it takes your past viewing habits. It takes where have you surfed on the internet. It takes elements maybe of your social media interactions, puts it all together using a machine learning type algorithm and says, oh, hey, this is what you should watch next. The person who writes that and figures out how to massage that data is the data scientist. And so, within Suncor, a very similar example is something that has happened in industry for quite a long time, but we as data scientists really help make it happen is a predictive maintenance. So, we've got, for instance, a pump or a piece of equipment, which you have to do maintenance on. And if you take all of the history of that piece of equipment, if you take all of the other business aspects that maybe impact that piece of equipment, you can start to predict when you need to do maintenance on it. Why is that important? So that's another thing that data scientists can help identify. It's important because you need to know when you got to buy the spare part so that you have it in stock. You need to identify when you need to take that piece of equipment out of service. And so using our skills as scientists in the experimentation and statistics, along with those people skills that help us communicate the why are we doing it? Like, why does this result out of this algorithm make sense? And why should you, the business, take that recommendation and act on it? That's our job as data scientists, is to help people interpret that data and put it together in a way that can help them actually make better decisions and therefore make more money for the company and improve working conditions and all those good things.
Very cool, Laura. Thank you so much. Winnie, what about your perspective from, a solution architect? How does that differ from what Laura does?
Well, me and Laura are in the same team, but we're basically responsible for different parts of the overall objective, right? So IT architecture is all about aligning this.
Oh no.
Uh-oh, we might have lost Winnie there for a moment. Let's see. Winnie, we might need you to check your connection or pop back in using that same link. Maybe just while Winnie is troubleshooting. We've just got a comment from Monique about, yes, this session will be live and recorded and available on YouTube after the session. So if you've registered for the event with your email, we'll be sending a link out to that after. Okay. Okay, I think Winnie's coming back. Laura, maybe while we're just waiting for Winnie, can you tell us a little bit about a project that you're working on right now and why you're excited about it?
I've been involved in a number of projects since we started, and they've kind of varied. Like I joined the Advanced Analytics group in January of 2020, so it was a very, very much a group in its infancy. And so, working towards projects that I'm excited about has been part of my goal, is being able to be involved in those. And I started my career as an engineer in refining. I was a hands-on process engineer at a refinery for Shell Canada, and have always kind of had a love for it. I've touched it many points over my career. And so I'm excited to be able to start getting involved again in a use case. We call them use case as opposed to projects in our refining business. And it's really all about optimizing how we run our refineries. So if you think about manufacturing, probably people are familiar with that idea, right? You take some raw materials and you make a widget out the other end. Well, a refinery is essentially a manufacturing process for stuff that makes our world go around, right? Take crude oil and make gasoline and diesel and jet fuel and things out the other end. It's a process that needs to be optimized. We need to be able to make the correct products at the correct time in the correct amounts. But there's so many moving parts within a refinery that we need to have an optimization over top of it all. And it doesn't just look at the nuts and bolts of it. So like that machine learning example I was talking about earlier, this is the kind of thing where we say, okay, so we know how these pieces of equipment operate. We know that how they have operated in the past, but we also know here's the market demand that's being forecast for gasoline, for jet fuel. How does that play into how we want to run our operations, not at every quarter, but how do we want to run them today? How do we want to run them in the next 60 minutes? And helping use that data to make those decisions. It's a big optimization problem. And so I'm super excited about being able to take those disparate pieces of data. Up till now, that kind of optimization has only ever been done at a sort of quarterly level, maybe monthly level. And so, obviously there's a big difference. There can be a really big difference between running a model or an optimizer once a month and what you're doing minute by minute or hour by hour in an operating facility. A good example is last year during the pandemic, I'm sure everybody knows, like nobody flew anywhere on an airplane. All of a sudden we had all this jet fuel. What do you do with it all? How do we predict something like that is going to happen in the future so we don't make all that jet fuel that no one's going to use? Or all of a sudden now pandemic's over, everybody's flying again. Okay, now we need to make a whole bunch of jet fuel, right? So those things can really, we can make a lot more money and be much more efficient with the use of our resources if we have that optimization in place and we can make those better decisions. So I'm super excited about being able to do this finally. So
I love, the way you talk about it, Laura. I can hear your voice just lights up. And, what I hear from that is it really is about solving new problems and doing things in a way with technology that haven't been done before. So being on the forefront of something is kind of what gets you going. Thank you. Oh, awesome. We've got Winnie back here, and we lost you, Winnie, just as you were kind of explaining the difference between, your role and Laura's role on the advanced analytics team. Can you just maybe share a little bit about, what you're doing as a solution architect?
Well, I mentioned that IT architecture is all about aligning business and IT strategies. So solution architect really want to make sure that the product we designed eventually will meet the business objectives, that the solution is viable, robust, cost-effective, and comply with this organization standard and best practices, such as technology standards, solution patterns, governance, and security. So an architect actually requires a little bit more than just technical knowledge. I think just like Laura, we have to really have a good understanding of the organizations, but a little bit at the border space too, because we need to know what kind of applications we use, what kind of data we have so that we can actually know how to kind of leverage them and put them together. And also need to understand the technology landscape. I think Laura can agree to that things are changing 100 miles a day, especially once we move into the cloud, right? So it is a very challenging to come up with what we consider as the best solutions, but it is a good challenge. It's a good problem to have, right? So, and I would say that working in the advanced analytic team, an architect also need to have a very analytical and data-driven mindset as well, because I think that we're very comfortable with building applications, building processes, but going into the world of data is open up a whole new ball game. So it's very exciting and challenging, but I love it, right? So it sounds like a lot to take on, but the good thing is we always work as a team, and Suncor is great on that. The whole analytic team is very tight.
Winnie, Laura had shared one thing that she's really excited about. What's a project that you're working on that gets you jazzed up every day?
Okay, so yeah, there's a lot of exciting projects going on. So I'm currently working on 2 use cases. One is the field maintenance optimizations, and the other one is on identify trade opportunities using big data and machine learnings. So we're always really looking at relationships and patterns in data because they always tell a story. So in the field maintenance optimizations, we are actually started with the descriptive right now. So we're actually generating missing data. So we're trying to understand what happened to a week that is in the schedule. But because they're not snapshotting the data in the production world, so we actually be very creative to kind of generate those snapshots back in time so that they can actually see what really happened in the field and actually confirm some of the things that they know is happening all the time, but cannot have proof. So that is a very exciting part. And then we use this data to kind of do some forecasting. So people are actually very excited. Now they actually have visibility to what is not available to them before, right? So the other one is on the tradings. It's really just, this is going to be a very exciting space too, because we're actually leveraging big data. It's not just the data that we have within Suncor, but all the world data. As Laura mentioned, that pandemic hits, jet fuel demand is coming down. So trading is involve a lot of information, the seasonality things, what's going on in the world economics. So we're trying to combine those informations to identify probable trades so that we can be able to grab onto more of those opportunities, right? So it is really exciting to me because like there's so much knowledge to capture, so much opportunities that can be opened up to us. So I love the job because it not only allow I can apply my technical skill, but I actually learn a lot about the business on the different trade as well. So it's like new challenge, new learning every day. It's like going to school without having all the exams.
Okay, yeah. So it feels like data really is a place where, if you're someone who loves to learn and is always looking for another challenge, like this is the place for you. But that, you're also getting this line of sight into business operations and objectives. And so it's not just about being technical. You really do need to have a big picture kind of thinking as well.
Definitely.
We often see technical roles. You can either become a specialist as an individual contributor, so you go highly technical, or we see a lot of people moving into more of the people management side. And I know both of you have been offered positions to move into those people management kinds of leadership roles and have turned them down in your career. Can you share a little bit about why you choose to stay on the technical track? And Laura, I'll start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. Many times over my career, I have been suggested and recommended I should go that way, and I have numerous times turned it down. I have experienced it, so I think I always say to people, like, give it a try. It might be something you enjoy. I know that, like, when I helped run a small company for 10 years. That was a big part of the job, was very much that people leader space. So that's part of the reason that I am not interested in doing it anymore. I think I'm actually pretty good at it, but I do not enjoy it. I find it really stressful because I take on everybody's emotions, and I find it really hard. Some people get supercharged by that. I don't. I think, as you pointed out earlier, I love to solve technical problems. I love to, apply new tools, new ideas, come up with creative ways to solve problems. And to me, that's really that technical stream for me. I think there's similar challenges in the people stream. It's just not my thing. And so it has been a challenge sometimes where people look at you and they go, well, why would you not take it's a promotion into a people leader position? I'm like, because I don't like doing it. And it's taken me a lot of years to not feel bad about that, but it's okay to say no. I'm not very good at saying no, I have to say. That's just my personality, right? But and so, knowing yourself, being, having tried it out, and then being able to say, okay, it's not for me. I want to find a company like Suncor where, like that technical path is open and there's opportunities to grow and learn new things in it. So yeah, that's kind of why I just don't enjoy it. And hey, if you do, awesome. We need lots of people like that. But that's not me. So
I like that, Laura. It really comes down to knowing yourself and what matters to you. And, if the technical challenges are what really get you up in the morning, to be able to find a company where there are growth opportunities on the technical side is important. So that's a really great nugget for our audience today. Winnie, how about you? Why have you turned down some people leader roles in the past?
Well, I think that just like Laura, right? Because I think that these are two very different roles and responsibilities. Whereas because I'm like Laura, I really enjoy the technical world, and in some way, I kind of feel safer just being stronger on the technology side of things. But and I agree with Laura. Like when you're being a people leader, it's all about developing the team, developing the people, and you have more accountability. Like if I move into a manager role, I definitely will see myself shift my focus into that space and make sure that my people have what they need to do the things. And I think that the whole world of like the cloud, the data, the advanced technology, analytics really get me so excited that I really want to spend time on it, right? So, and then like being an architect, it really allows me to learn a lot of new things, provide the technical leaderships that I really enjoy at a larger scope, bigger scale, influence more projects. So I get fit on that one. But I also think that it's a little bit of a traditional way of thinking about your career path too, because people think that you become a developer and architect, maybe the next step is a manager. And I think a lot of company kind of confine your thinking that way too, because without moving into the manager role, it seems like that you're stuck. But the reality is there's so much to do on the technical side, and you can't be good at both, right? So I think that you don't need to be named a manager to be a leader. I think that's another way we have to think about it, right? I do involve in a lot of mentorships. So especially when a girl comes to me, I always jump on the opportunities to guide her through, because I think there's still a little bit of taboo thinking that girl is not good in technology. I would love to see myself as a people leader as well, because I do that kind of mentorship. I make sure that people who want to get into this field get the opportunity and voice.
Yeah, I was going to actually comment on that too, right? Like Winnie and I have done similar things in that role, in that we still mentor people. I call it leading from behind or leading from the side, where you're like suggesting things. People look to you for guidance, but it's not like you're the official one who does their performance reviews and deals with all that stuff, right? So
yeah, all the fun without the responsibility.
That's such a good point, Winnie and Laura, is that you can be a leader, I think, without the title. I think you can also be a leader at multiple stages in your career. You don't need to have, 20 years experience. It could be 5 and you're leading someone who has less than you. That leadership is a role we step into regardless of the accolades and the title. So thank you for that reminder. I think that's great for everyone to hear today. Okay, now I know both of you have undergone career pivots, and I think this is going to be especially interesting to some of the folks in the audience who are coming from, petrochemical or engineering backgrounds. But that moment of like, I've built my career in this track, and now I'm going to do something else, or I've built my career at this company, and now I'm going to leave and do something else. For anybody who's at that point, they're kind of on that precipice of making a big change and they really want to get into data. Do you have any advice for them based on your own experiences? Winnie, why don't you start us off?
Okay. So for me, it's more like making a move rather than a pivot, because I have always worked in the field of IT, but more focused on enterprise systems. But I know I'm always interested in working with data. Even in the very beginning of time, when people saying that I have an Excel problem, I jump to solve it, right? Because like I said, you don't use Excel. And then we recognize there are so much potential with data. But so we have been talking about big data, data-driven organizations, but the reality is not all organizations will go down that path, because becoming a data-driven organization actually requires visions and big investment in organization culture and people. I know people will try to do things the best they can, but the difference with Suncor is, as one example, is like it comes from the top down. I can tell you that this will make the transitions way better and way faster. So I worked with this company for 17 years and get to a positions where I'm very comfortable. As we all know, once you get into a certain level at a certain seniority, you got reputation, you got pay that are very good, right? So I'm facing seeing so much happening. Like you said, as an architect, I don't get hands-on. People are learning new technologies, how to do it, which I can say the word, but I don't know exactly how it works, right? So you get a little bit uncomfortable. So I have to make a decision like, do I want to continue to stay there and for the rest of my career? Because it could be a very lucrative, 10 years or 20 years. But I really want to pursue what I want, passionate about. It's not about getting a title, getting a good pay job. It's also kind of like a personal commitment to get better every day as well. So I decided to take the jump. And like you mentioned, it is actually a journey and experience when you do that, because you have to come down in your pay. You don't get the same reputation. You have to build up everything again. But I would say that leaving a comfort zone is always a good thing. It's an easy thing, but it's a good thing because there's so much learning. And I have to say, this is the best thing I did for myself for a long time, because when you stay in this one position for so long, you just get too comfortable and you don't really see all the potential that is available to you.
Thank you, Winnie. That's really good. So, for anyone that's kind of on that cusp of making that choice, what I hear from Winnie is to be courageous and follow what really matters to you. Data is a path where you're constantly being challenged. And so this could be your first big challenge. Laura, How about you? Oh, go ahead, Winnie. Did you want to add on?
I just want to comment that you really should have faith in what you believe in, and hard work always pays off.
Thank you. That's good. Laura.
Yeah, mine's a bit more drastic than Winnie's, I guess. And it is and it isn't. So I was a process engineer, chemical engineer graduate from undergraduate, and worked as a process engineer for 29 years, 28 years. So like Winnie, you've been doing the same thing for a very long time. You get very comfortable with it. I did find, call it a midlife crisis, whatever you want to call it. I turned 50 and I was like, do I really want to keep doing this thing for the next 15 or 20 years or whatever that number is? And the answer in my head was definitely no. I went through a fairly significant career counseling exercise, which I'd never been through. And something that kept popping to the top of my list was things around data. One of the things I found very interesting, and I think this is something people could do on their own, they don't need a career counselor, but I would highly recommend, it's not only looking at what do you really like and what do you enjoy doing, what are you good at, what also do you not like? What do you want to avoid, right? Like you've been in that job where you hated this particular thing about it. And so I had never identified those things. And so to me, that was part of the process of exploration as well. And so I went back to school. Mine was pretty drastic. I was like, I need some new tools in my toolbox. I need to go back to school and learn, some of these newer ways of looking at data, dealing with large data, understanding the science and the statistics behind it. Because as an engineer, I know there's probably a lot of engineers in the audience. We don't learn a lot of statistics, and we don't learn a lot of really good ways to talk about that message about what does the data actually mean. We just use it and get on with the job, sort of thing. And so I think, from a career pivot perspective, it's all about, I think we talked about this already, right? It's about knowing yourself and about knowing what it is you like, what you don't like, what you're good at, what you're not good at. Very much not doing something just because you should, or because the company you're with says you should, right? Because it's the next step. And being that, and I think this is something I really enjoyed about coming to Suncor, was they really appreciated that, hey, you've got this great experience, but you've been curious and you put yourself out there and really changed what you did when you're 50. That's a big deal, right? At that point, a lot of people are thinking, I'm going to retire. Well, it's hey, I'm going to change my career. I'm going to do something new. It's never too late to do that. So it's never too early or too late. If you're stuck, do something different, right? So yeah, that was kind of where I came at. It's curiosity, lifelong learning. It never ends either, right? And I think Winnie would probably, her and I have talked about this. We learn from each other. We do courses sometimes within, we learn on the job, just tons of ways that we continue to learn, right? So, and that's important to me. I love that learning.
It sounds like that initiative and willingness to learn is a really key success factor for folks who are building their careers in the data space. I know, Laura, you're involved in some of the hiring processes at Suncor. Do you have any advice for what makes what are the qualities or traits of a successful applicant on the advanced analytics team at Suncor?
It's a good question. It definitely, being strong in your technical aspects, especially if you're looking to come into the data science or data engineering aspects. Obviously, it seems like that's a no-brainer, right? You need to have that technical know-how. You need to be able to prove that you have that technical know-how. And sometimes that's a challenge for folks. I've mentored folks within our organization, but I've also done a number of things with people in the community. And often it's about maybe you need a portfolio of data projects that you've worked on. If you don't have, for instance, an advanced degree, or even if you do, right? If you've maybe done work at a particular job that's in that data space, seeing that on your resume and you being able to explain it in terms of that data science or data engineering or visualization space is important. I think the other really important part, and this, at least when I was hired, it was a different process, but it's still an important thing, is the showing that you have the ability to explain your work. So maybe you're a great coder and you can actually, write algorithms, but if you can't explain to someone why and how you did what you did, that's definitely something that's going to be harder to get past. So working on that, call it communication skills, but really being able, I don't know who said it, but basically, if you can teach someone something, you probably will learn it way better, right? If you can teach it, it's the same idea, right? If I can communicate to you how I came up with the conclusions I did, or the algorithm I did, then I'm going to believe you a lot more, and that's super important in our business, because so much of Suncor and so much of the oil and gas industry in general is not data savvy, and so we, us data people, we need to be out there sort of explaining to people what it is, why we're doing it, how it works. And if we can't do that, it's going to be really hard.
Okay, that's great advice, Laura. So what I heard was, build your portfolio of data projects and how you can showcase that, but also get really good at explaining your process, because that's kind of a really key successful skill. Winnie, do you have anything to add in terms of, what makes someone successful at Suncor?
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that Laura has said so far. Like, if you want to build a career in this field, definitely there's a lot more different roles and responsibility. Laura talked about data science, be able to explain the science behind is very critical. As an architect, I should say, if you're doing a data engineering, having a very strong technical background and skill set is very critical because you're hands-on. But for my role as a data architect, I may not know how to build a pipeline, but I need to understand how all the technologies work together, make sure that the technology landscape for the use case or for the organizations will work seamlessly together, right? So there are different kind of skill sets, so it depends on what you go into. And I also like to mention that just because you're interested in data, it's not limited to your data, being a data architect, being data scientist. There's a lot of fields in this space. If you're very good at visualizing data, that is you can do a visualization. If you're good at telling story, there's lots of demands for different talents to make this project overall success, right?
Cool. I love that, Winnie. You really open it up. So, it's not, yeah, you're right. Those aren't the only roles that are available in this space. I'm going to start opening it up to audience questions. So we're going to scroll through the chat. So if you're joining us from YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, feel free to post your questions into the comment boxes on those platforms, and we'll be able to get to them. I see a question here from Vrishang. He's asking about how can you overcome that hurdle of number of years experience when applying to jobs? Because many companies are looking for 2 to 3 years. I'm sure many are even 5 years experience. You know, is there a way to get past that and through that tough one? Either of you can take that.
So I'm going to jump in a little bit because like there's so much demand for talent these days. If you look at Suncor or actually a lot of companies, they actually open up internships. Like if you're going through a course, like one of the best way to get into the field is to join a program, whether it's like a state or university, and they offer a lot of apprenticeship opportunities. And even within Suncor, there's a lot of people who join the company as a student, and they come back because they have proven their value. They have proven that they have what it takes to be part of the team. So that is actually one way to do things. And then I know Laura got more involved with the hiring process, but I think that 2 or 3 years experience is just what's set on the requirement. If you get a chance to get into the interview, that's where you can impress and show how your experience in the past can lend itself into your new role.
Yeah, and I think I would add to that. It happens all the time, right? The job description gets written. It's 2 years, it's 5 years, it's 7 years of experience. I can tell you that to find a data scientist with 7 years or 10 years experience in oil and gas in Calgary, they don't exist. They are unicorns. Like, we have like 2 at Suncor or 3, and but they started in other fields as well and got named data scientists when it became a name. So I think this is actually a critical point, and it was, I think, part of the reason that I ended up getting in this particular role with no formal data science experience is you need to learn how to translate the work that you've already done and present it in a way that talks to data science. So how was it that you used data to solve a problem? Maybe you didn't use Python, maybe you used Excel. It's okay. That's actually an okay thing to do. But if you can say, this is the way I'm thinking about it as a scientist, is specifically data science techniques, I think that absolutely legit to say, the last 2 years I wasn't called a data scientist, but I did data science, right? So, and that again, I would highly recommend still that portfolio. You've got a GitHub repo or a website or however you like to have that portfolio. If you're a visualization person, right? Like those things, we do look at them. Like when we get to a short list, I'm clicking on those links. Like I'm looking at that stuff. So it's important.
Yeah, I like to comment on that too. Like a data science actually is a lot of field. Like if you're engineers, you already have a background that is way stronger than what someone that comes from a computer background, because data science is all about business. If you have a good business background, you are already a step ahead.
Okay, that's really good. I appreciate those comments. And I think a takeaway for the audience today is if you don't already have a portfolio, you should. And so that can be something maybe you're working on over the weekend. We've got a more technical question that's come in here. Can you give us an example of a big data end-to-end solution the team has been involved with? What's the volume and velocity of data in some of these big data solutions? Winnie,
Winnie, you're probably better on this one.
Okay, I'm pretty new to Suncor, but I do know that like for one of the good example of a big data is the field data. So you got a lot of we call it IoT, Internet of Things. So basically, is you put a lot of sensor into the field, and then capture the signals from the field and send it back to the team so that the data scientists can actually analyze it. So for example, I'm going to use one example that I would know better because if your engines, let's put it this way, if there's a machine that was doing things, they will put sensor at the different part of the machine and capture maybe the temperature, the vibrations, the pressure at different point in time. And there's this kind of data actually coming very high frequency, like every few seconds. And you can talking about gigabytes of data every day, if not every minute. So these are the data that there's a lot of technique in processing this, right? So one of the things is like to combine all this data, to analyze, build a model around it to say, oh, because of all these elements, that these machines might be ready to break down within the 4 hours. So maybe we should call in this expert to come in and replace a certain part of the machine. So that's a very effective way of using big data, because now you can actually prevent machines from coming down, which is affecting your productivity, because productivity is very key in the oil and gas industry. And you probably save money too, because instead of replacing this part every 24 months, maybe we only need to replace it like 3 months. We might be able to stretch that that parts for another 12 months. So these are all very creative way to not only save money, but it's also better for the organization, better for the environment as well. So that's one example that I can give.
Thank you, Winnie. That's great. We've got a good question here from Janet, who's asking about, there's a bunch of different training programs for data scientists. Do you know which one Suncor looks to do most of their recruiting from?
I'm not sure that we actually look to any one particular one. Honestly, I think I'd have to ask HR on that one. I know that we do look at every single resume that comes in. I know that there has been work with some of the folks at U of C, but similarly with the folks at U of A, and I don't know that there's any formalized. I will say this. The whole data space is very much less formalized than, say, engineering, right? So I'm familiar with and probably lots of the people on this call will be familiar with, there's, you graduate from an engineering program and you go through an EIT phase. And of course, if you've done a co-op program, you've already got an in with an employer. And then there's a very structured career progression and understanding of how that hiring works. That does not exist in the data space. So a lot of companies are either making up those roles brand new. They don't have career tracks yet. They don't have, benchmarks and salaries. They don't have those relationships with the universities. It's all new. So that's good and bad, right? So it's harder to figure out where you fit. But you're also, even if you don't have an advanced degree or a particular degree in a thing, you've got an opportunity to get in there and say, I have experience that's relevant, and I can show you how it's relevant, regardless of the fact that I don't have, you couldn't be an engineer without an engineering degree, but you could totally be a data scientist without a data science degree. So,
and I think there's a lot of online courses too. Like I think a lot of people even in our department are taking Coursera. There's online program that offer a degree. So, and I know that a few of our data scientists are taking online classes on Master of Data Science, right? So yeah, lots of opportunities out there.
Just building off of that, Winnie, we have a question from Cher about what are the best ways to build up technical competencies. So Coursera is one of them. Do you guys have recommendations on other learning or training that you look for or are doing at Suncor?
So one of the things is I think you have to look at the technologies that you pursue. Like for example, cloud is one of the key technologies that every companies are using. Suncor is primarily on Azure, if you're not aware of that. So if you really want to get into Suncor then I think that getting an Azure experience is important. So Microsoft offers a lot of training, free online training, and you can attend your own certification. So that is a very good starting point, right? So that is some of the technology background that you need to take on. So if you want to be a data engineer, just make sure you get the data engineering associate certification from Azure. And that, even if you don't have experience, that proves that you are dedicated to your career. You know what you're doing, right?
Thank
you. We also do data camp. Internally, we have data camp licenses for people to upskill. So as well as Coursera. So those are two that we turn to as sort of third-party platforms.
Cool. Okay, that's really great. I'm going to jump to a more technical question here. How do you see the use of different programming languages within a data science team? Is it okay to mix and match Python, R, and Julia to handle data wrangling and machine learning modeling, for example? Laura, you're laughing. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
I'm laughing because if you've been in data science at all, you know that there's this ongoing rivalry, kind of like the Oilers and the Flames, only in this case it's between R and Python. You'll find the people who are more maybe they have a statistics or math background are often the R folks. The ones who might come from computer science are often the Python folks. Those of us who don't come from either background, it kind of depends what language strikes a chord with you. I'm personally, Python is my main language, but I could do R if I have to. It really doesn't matter. Again, it comes down to, can you describe what you've been doing? Now, when it comes to productionizing a model and getting it into production, that's a whole different thing. And it may not even be either one of those. In fact, oftentimes it's not. It may end up in Spark. It may end up in Java. Scala, like there's lots of different options that end up happening on the back end for productionizing. Julia, I have to say, I'd love to learn more about. I don't know anyone within Suncor that uses Julia. That doesn't mean you can't. Again, it would just be a matter of being able to describe what you're doing. Yeah, so it's a funny thing because we always have these R and Python wars.
Interesting. Okay. I think though with tech, there's so many ways to solve the problem that, we can't get stuck up on the how, but we have to always be in pursuit of that, like solving that problem. And that's really at the core of everything. Last question from our audience today is from John. And he's asking, in your experience working in oil and gas, have you witnessed a greater commitment to workplace inclusion and diversity, or do you still feel like there's a lot left to be done?
Winnie, do you want to?
I can speak to that. My experience at Suncor, yeah, definitely. Compared to the last company I worked for, I didn't realize that how small my circle was, because I'm basically working with a pretty, I could say, white team. But I really enjoy working at Suncor. Like I think I see a lot of ladies in the team, like a lot of ladies data scientists in Suncor, and we have put in a lot of measure and exercise to make sure that everyone's voice is heard. And is there always? I think that there's always more work to be done, but I'm actually thinking that Suncor has done a great job in this space.
Thank you, Winnie. Laura, anything to add?
Yeah, I would say it's often company dependent. I think John's question was very sort of general to the oil and gas industry. And personal experience, because I've been around a lot of it for a lot of years, you'll find pockets that are really not diverse and not inclusive. And you'll find some like Suncor that are tremendously so. And, if that's important to you, seek those out, avoid the other ones. It'll be pretty apparent. It won't be, it will be obvious.
Yes, totally.
And I think, this, workplace inclusion is a journey that we are all on, and we all have ownership over as, we step into our own leadership roles, regardless of titles. So I think that's an onus that individuals can take away, not just companies. So thank you for that question. We are nearing the top of the hour, so we are going to wrap it up with some closing remarks. Huge thank you to Laura and Winnie for sharing their experiences and insights. You have been fantastic today. I know there are probably many people who are very interested in connecting with both of you. I also know that you are two very busy ladies. So I want to just do a little plug for Chic Geek's career pathing. This is our fresh take on a mentorship program. And when you sign up, you get one new connection every month to someone in the space. When you fill out your profile, you kind of indicate what you're interested in, and then we start to match you. And so you might not be connected with Laura and Winnie exactly, but you could be connected with other women working in data who could share some of these insights. So definitely check that out. We're always looking for career guides as well. So mentors on the platform who are willing to lend a hand and support another woman in her journey through tech. So if you have a couple of years experience, or if you're pivoting and you want that story to share, please do sign up. We need role models at all stages of their careers. And lastly, if you have enjoyed this event, please do take a few minutes to answer our post-event survey, which should be in your inboxes now. Feel free to leave some kind words for our speakers. We'll share any feedback directly with them as well. Our next BTS event is happening on November 19th, and we'll be taking you behind the scenes with Sonova, a company leading the charge in providing innovative hearing solutions to make sound accessible to all. So stay tuned for that one. And thank you everyone who joined us here today. Happy Friday and have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.